So we went from $350,000 revenue to $1 million, to $3 million, to $6 million, to $10 million, to $20 million, to up to $1 billion.
Hello, and welcome to the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm your host, Nick McGowan. Today on the show, I have John Hewitt. John, how you doing?
Incredible. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. Second time you give me that answer, so I appreciate that, man. Hey, why don't you kick us off? Tell us what you do for a living, and what's one thing most people don't know about you that's maybe a little odd or bizarre?
There's many, many bizarre things in my life, but one thing that people don't know is that long before poker became televised and huge, I played in the World Series of Poker back when there was in 1978, when there was less than 100 participants. Now there's over tens of thousands of participants. But I'm a CEO of Loyalty Brands. I have 8 different franchise systems focused in three divisions. One is tax and accounting. One is roofing and siding and solar. And the third is everything pets, led by our mobile pet franchise.
Nice. Now, this isn't something I'm sure you turned on overnight, and I'm sure it wasn't also like an easy transition from being in the World Series of Poker in the 70s to where you're at now. But give us a little bit of context. How did you get started with all this?
I started when I was at the University of Buffalo. I took an H&R Block course, loved it, and 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. And you're not old enough to remember a world without computers, but back in the 70s, my dad bought one of the first Apple computers, and he was the CFO of a public company. He liked it better than the mainframe that was running his public company. And he was a visionary. He decided that we should computerize taxes. So we both quit our jobs in 1981 and built the first tax software for an Apple computer. No one wanted it, way ahead of its time. Got lucky and found a company in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. We bought 6 offices from his widow and went public and merged the 2 companies, changed the name to Jackson Hewitt, and 15 years later sold it for $483 million. And Jackson Hewitt went on to become a $1 billion company. So our first major venture was a $1 billion company. And today Jackson Hewitt has about 6,000 offices. They're top 25 largest franchise chains in the country.
Yeah. Do you feel any sort of way knowing that it's a $1 billion company and it's not yours anymore?
No, after that, I started Liberty Tax, and that became another $500 million company. So I've founded 2 $500 million companies. And again, I brought in over 5,200 franchisees in my career. Helped 5,200 families, and plus they had hundreds of thousands of employees. So no, I don't. I do this for the journey and the joy. And our mission statement says it all, and that is having fun, improving lives.
Yeah. Now let's take a bit of a step back to you and your dad. Starting this thing off, did you have ideas of, well, this will turn into a potentially $1 billion company, and then we'll sell it and we'll get another one, and that'll become sort of the same thing and we'll help lots of people? Or were you kind of looking at it like, well, my dad and I get to build this thing, we have an idea, or was it kind of a mixture of all of that?
Well, there were 2 parts to it. One is building the software, and then second was building Jackson Hewitt. The first part, when we built the software, we were just trying to sell it. So we tried it. We went to H&R Block and said, I've been an executive at H&R Block, one of the top 50 executives in the country. I said, buy my software. This is the future. And they were so conventional and antiquated that in an Andrew report in 1983, they said, people ask us why we don't computerize. And we say, we tried it. Customers don't care. We're never going to computerize. So they just were so conservative. And but with the tax company, when we bought Mel Jackson Tax Service, they had 6 locations and Block had 9,000. We set out in my business plan in 1982. I said, we're going to try to get to one more office than H&R Block. We're going to try to get to 9,001 offices. adding 8,995. Well, we only got to 6,000, but it did become $1 billion company as a result.
Yeah. So you talked about the mission statement, fun and inspiring people, right?
Improving lives.
Improving lives. So those are those should be core competencies for every human. Like we should have fun and we should improve other people's lives. And I really believe that purpose is a community thing. It's not a solo mission. And sometimes people can get lost in that where it's like, well, my purpose feels so deeply intimate to me that this is the thing. This feels like it was part of your purpose. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, it should be a goal for all of us. Most people only want to, they want to, from each person they work with, they want to improve their own lives, and so they manipulate other people. So it's a rare minority that understand that the real purpose of life is to serve others and to make a difference. And so that is a rare trait, actually.
Would you think that's something that can be cultivated and learned, or is that mostly internal and like a talent we come into this planet with?
I think there are most things can be learned. Some things can't, like attitude. I've never been able to change someone's attitude, but I think that can be learned. That to appreciate, and as you get older, you most people, or many people, if not most, they mellow and they understand that giving back is rewarding. And if you pay attention, the more you give, the more you receive. So it's self-fulfilling that as you experiment with giving, you get more, you receive more. And I don't personally typically receive nearly as much as I give each person from that person, but good things happen to me if I give to other people.
Yeah. Was that something that was kind of innately part of the way that you looked at life, or was that something that came along earlier in life, like maybe through your pop even?
I learned it from my parents, and I watched my parents, and you know, I'm lucky I had my parents until I was into my 60s, and when I was in my 40s, one of my people father died, and I said, "Did you have any regrets?" And said, "Yeah." She said, "There were some things I wish I had told him," and so I sat down and wrote a letter to each of my parents, and I got different skills or lessons from each one of them, right? They're very different people. And that was one of the lessons I got that both of them had, is they were very giving and beloved because of it.
That's cool. What a beautiful thing. I mean, you can learn a lot from your parents. Sometimes it's what to do. Oftentimes it's like what not to do. Um, but for you to also be able to be empathetic and understanding of the other people you work with, look, you've done this for a long time. And the people that listen to this show are typically leaders, either in their own businesses or in their careers, and their ups and downs. We all get that. For the most part, the ups and downs, when you look back, you can see how they tie together, like the how the points all worked out together. What are some of the main things that you've really kind of worked on yourself, be it internally or just the way that you kind of work with people over the course of time that you look back? If you had to give a bit of a synopsis or summary to it, these are some core things to go through.
Yeah, I think that my philosophy is that without downs, the ups wouldn't be as high. You know, if your life just went and just had a few ups here and there, uh, then so your ups are higher because you go into valleys, peaks and valleys. Your peaks are higher, and so I've had to change and improve over the years. And you know, I'm fanatically committed to winning. To win, I have to have the best system. To have the best system, it has to be improving. And so I'm fanatically committed. But improvement requires change, and improvement and change are a, if you're going to do great things, you need to be uncomfortable. There's no comfort in changing the norm, or in being outside the box all the time. You have to be uncomfortable. And so I learned to put up, not only to put up with discomfort, but to embrace criticism.
Oftentimes people can hear be coachable, and sometimes you can think, well, fuck off, I'm trying, and other times it's like, okay, well, I want to learn from this. Those hits at different times can trigger things out of us. There's deeper things that have happened, or somebody criticizes and they're really asking a question, we can be triggered. I think it's a separate piece of like, you need to process through that and understand where that all comes from. But being able to take those hits, the advice that you would give to somebody, what does that look like for them to be able to not interpret throughout and go, well, I'm terrible, this is how it is, and understanding and basically showing ourselves grace. Like, you are here, who you are right now, and in the future you won't be, because there will be more time and experience through that. But what advice like would you give to an employee or even a leader in your company? Like, here's the deal, dude, that sort of thing.
It's case by case, of course. We all face different adversities, and we all have different skills. We're all have faced different problems. And so I try to be a mentor for people and to listen to people. I try to be a active listener that so many people don't listen carefully. What they do is they listen enough to say what they're going to say next. And they're thinking about what they're going to be saying rather than pay full attention. So one of the things I start with is being a exceptional listener, and then I find out I help them figure out what they want to be. I ask this question in every interview, and most people don't know the answer. I say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And most people, 95% or more of Americans, don't have a 5-year plan or a 5-year goal. They don't have a goal, so they can't have a plan because they don't know where they want to be. So how can they have a plan to get to somewhere that's neither here nor there? They could be going in the wrong direction. So I counsel people to help them to a self-realization and point them towards that rainbow, end of the rainbow. Everyone has their own desire where they want to be at the end of the rope, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. So it's one by one, listening and coaching and helping people help themselves.
Yeah. What a what a novel concept. Let me help you help you. You can actually fix these problems for the people. And like you said a little earlier, you haven't been able to change somebody's attitude because that's them. That's a them issue. They need to be able to change that. And I'm glad that you pointed out you didn't go to, I coached them through this or anything, even verbiage wise like that, but use the word mentor. I think that's a huge, huge difference, because then you're working with them. You're not coaching them, telling them this is the play, get your ass back in the game, this is how you do this thing, but you're actually working with them on that. Certain entrepreneurs I'll talk to, when you really get to like deeper conversations, they're like, I don't want to do that with people, because what if they're not going to be here anymore? Or what if they're not in the right spot and I've screwed up or whatever? And those can be internal conversations or like deep, dark room conversations they have with themselves. But have you ever been in that spot where you're like, look, I'm here for the person, and your spot is no longer in the company because of what you're saying to me, not because of their performance or anything like that. Have you ever had to like help somebody walk themselves out?
Oh, absolutely. And I learned a good way to say that to people, that this isn't the place where you're going to be exceptional. God has a place for everyone where they can be exceptional. This isn't your place. And you need to go find a place that you can be exceptional.
I can appreciate that you probably have a deeper conversation with those people and that you want to help them. I had worked with a previous company before where they would ask people to seek excellence elsewhere, but it was a nice way of telling them to fuck off. I remember being like, well, that's a real sweet way of just telling them to don't ever come back and hand in their keys, instead of like, let me help you figure out a way to get through this. One of the reasons why I wanted you to be on the show was because of the work that you've done and the longevity of the work, and also the person that you seem to be. And I'm happy to see that you are not only, it seems to be, but you really do genuinely seem to really care about these people. And having been through all this stuff, again, the people listening to this show are leaders in what they're doing. And I can almost guarantee that a small percentage haven't actually built billion-dollar companies. There are probably some in here, but for the most part, these are people that are trying to work, trying to learn, trying to grow, and trying to work through their own stuff. So with that in mind, working through the personal things that you've had to deal with, were there some major things that you can look back at and see some shifts that happened, or even some specific times? Like that was a moment in time that everything changed from there.
Oh, absolutely. As I said, no one gets to skate, and everyone faces adversity. And the more successful you are, the more mistakes you've made, and often the bigger the obstacles you've had to overcome. So there were lots of dark periods where, or I shouldn't say lots, but there's some certain tens of thousands of difficulties. But there was a couple very dark periods that wow, that didn't look like we were going to make it almost. That it was things happen. Sometimes it's your own fault, my fault, and sometimes it's external. It's the industry fault. But you're going to face those problems, and you're going to get knocked down. The winners just always get up.
Sure. Are there any stories that come to mind that were kind of early on stories, or even like really growing pain stories?
Yeah, we started Jackson Hewitt in '82, and 6 years later, we had about 50 offices, and we had a chance to buy over 200 locations. And from the second largest preparer, H&R Block had 9,000. The second largest had about 270, and we had 50. We were third largest in the country, and we could. They approached us in October and said, "Would you like to buy these 200 locations?" And so it was. We made the mistake of biting off more than we could chew, and so we way overexpanded. We almost went bankrupt, and had a very dark period from February of that year when we were running into all the difficulties until the following January when we recovered with the next tax season. It was a very dark period, and we almost went bankrupt. And it was my own doing that I did it, made the mistake of biting off more than I could chew, overexpanding, which is I've come to learn that's very common in business.
It's a wild thing that people want to be able to grow and grow rapidly, but then can miss the little tweaks and things that happen to us as leaders throughout the slowness of the growth. Like I've seen different people like cripple themselves or literally go out of business because they're like, well, we landed all these clients and now fuck, what do we do? How do we do it? Our processes are shit and all these other things. But what's that balance look like, of like taking the calculated or even crazy risks? That's part of our sadistic mentality as entrepreneurs. Like sometimes we'll fuck around and find out. Sometimes you learn the hard way. But how do you then manage going, all right, what's the calculated piece to it? And I get that every situation is different, but for those people to understand, and I guess really what I'm getting at is, what did you take away from all of that for the people that go, well, I need to grow. We need to grow rapidly. We need to do all these things. What advice would you give them other than like, calm down, sit your ass down and breathe first?
Yeah, remember I mentored over 5,200 franchisees and helped them. And I've never gone to a franchisee and said, you need to expand. I spent a lot of time talking to franchisees. You're trying to do it too quickly. And so it comes down to the basics, right? This isn't rocket science. This isn't as to how fast you can grow. You need two things. You need people and money. And so with each one of them, instead of saying you can't meet that goal, you can't add 4 more offices this year, I said, here's what you need in order to, let's determine what we need in terms to open 4 more offices. We need X amount of people, we need X amount of management, and we need X amount of money. And is that available? And then I will help you analyze that. If you're not sure you have the proper management personnel, or I'll help guide you in hiring that many people, and the money is pretty black and white, then if you're not sure, I'll weigh in on each of those. But first, let's decide what you need to do in order to do that, and then I'll support you. If we agree, this is the number of people, this amount of money, then I'm here to support you in it grow as fast as you want. So I learned to say no by saying yes. I say yes, you can do it if, and then we look at the basics of the needs in order to have that growth carefully and manageable.
So it's calculated upon calculated at that point. And it sounds like you kind of remove emotion from that, where I can understand that a lot of people, if they're in a spot where they're unsure, or it's like new territory for them, your emotions can easily seep in, and some more so than others. I know for myself, I'm a hyper emotional person, so I can feel those things happening at different times. I've watched different people who seem to be emotionless move throughout things without feeling the emotion or the empathy of other people they're working with, and they'll abuse teams. They're like, I don't give a shit. We sold 100,000 of these. Like, go. You're burning people out. So have you ever been in one of those spots where it's like you've had somebody that has extremely grown, but now they're starting to see some of like the kind of the cracks in the hull?
It happens to almost everyone. You're almost always the best people are the most successful, are tested because they're people aren't in general good delegators, and people aren't generally the same person that can run one office well isn't the same person that can run 20 offices well. There's the way I think of it is there's chiefs and then there's chiefs of chiefs. If you think of Indian tribes, I think of a tribe of teepees where there's one camp and there's a chief of that camp. But then there's 100 camps and there's 100 different chiefs. Who's the chief of all of them? That's the chief of chiefs. Most chiefs can't be the chief of chiefs. So they miss on the skills and the ability to do that. And so in order to do that, you need to transition, and most people almost everyone hits a wall where they're just incapable of learning enough to go to the next level. And, I built a company in 1982, we had sales of, what was it, 350,000. We built a company with sales of $1 billion. So we went from $350,000 revenue to $1 million, to $3 million, to $6 million, to $10 million, to $20 million, to up to $1 billion. And the same, you have to trade in new people all the time. And I was blessed that I had the ability to run both companies. I could learn and improve and adapt, but almost no one on my staff could. I had to change out my chief marketing officer, my chief information officer, my CFOs. We had to change as we got bigger because they didn't have the ability to go to the next level.
In the early stages of that, how did you know you were making the right decisions? And granted, I know you made wrong decisions at times because you're human. That's what happens. But being able to know when to change somebody out.
First of all, I'm only right like 60% of the time. When I made those changes, the new person I brought in I was only right about 60% of the time. The most important thing in making the changes is to move quickly when you made the wrong choice, when you haven't picked well. It's clear when people need to be changed out because they don't meet their goals. So I'm very black and white. That, for example, it's easy to measure someone in bringing in new franchisees, right? If our goal is 100, it's either pass fail. You either get to 100 or you don't. And so if someone is incapable of growing, And our goal next year is 200, and then the year after is 300. And there you have to measure their ability to train and hire and support the new staff, and to be able to budget and hire as and fire to get to that level. It becomes apparent to everyone, not just myself, but everyone on the executive team sees the weakness of one of the key people, and it becomes obvious that we have to get someone over. Now, we often went to those people and said, you can stay and we're going to put someone above you. But virtually no one stayed in that situation. They went on and to be exceptional somewhere else at a smaller company. And as we brought in more and more experienced, capable people.
That's interesting, because there's also the idea of training and building within. And that wasn't something you really mentioned, but I wonder if that's a piece of it too, where I understand if you're like, well, we're going to put somebody over you. Do you want to stay? Probably not. You might have somebody every once in a while. It's like, thank you, I didn't want this responsibility. And then it solves it all. But there are also times where people will show themselves working through the ranks, where you as an executive team can remove that emotion from it and say, this is the person that's doing the right thing. Let's shift this thing around and make that call pretty quickly.
Sure, I move people. I think I was one of my skills, and one of my blessings is I was able to pick people and move them to different chairs. So at one point, I moved someone at Jackson Hewitt from my attorney, in-house counsel, to director of franchise sales. At one person at Liberty Tax, the person under the CFO, I moved him over to be director of operations. So so I moved people around over the years. I spotted core competencies and ability to improve and change. And I moved them into better suited spots for them, and help the company in that way. So yeah, whenever possible, we tried to nurture people. We always had beneath the executives were superstars or future superstars that we were continually to train and to give guidance to, that hopefully would be able to take over or move into one of the executive slots at some point.
I'm sure there's a lot that we could get into even deeper with that, with those different pieces and different people, even executive teams and people's biases or not biases and all that sort of stuff. But I really appreciate everything we've gotten into today. And thank you for being on the show. I know that there's a lot of things that you have going on throughout the day, and for you to peel out time to talk about this, I think this is something where the entrepreneurs that listen to this, or even people that are just trying to manage their lives a little differently, can really get a lot out of this. And before I let you go, what's that one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody that's on their path towards self-mastery?
My general advice to everyone in life is find something you love to do, work hard, persevere. On Monday morning, if you're going to work and you're not looking forward to it, life's too short. Change. Find something you love. And secondly, everything worthwhile requires hard work. There's no skating, there's no easy win. And then the number one most important attribute for success is perseverance. Everyone gets knocked down, everyone faces adversity, and winners just get up each and every time. You got to kill me to stop me.
Again, John, it's been great having you on the show. Where can people find you, and where can they connect with you?
I'm at loyaltybrands.com, and there are, if you would like your listeners would like a copy of my book, they can get my best-selling book for free, I Compete, and just buy a link on loyaltybrands.com.
That's awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. And John, thanks again for your time. Appreciate you being on.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nick.